This hourly segment is brought to you by The Real Story with Jeannie Ives and Amy Jacobson. Heard weekday mornings at 11 on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Our friend Colonel Jim Carafano, retired, Heritage Foundation, on with Harris Faulkner yesterday on Fox News, talking about and responding to the critiques or the advocacy from some, myself included, to quote-unquote finish the job in the Middle East as it pertains to the Iranians, of course, and specifically with respect to the nuclear program. And additionally, with respect to control of the Strait of Hormuz. Why it's not so easy to just finish the job, according to Carafano.
More of this, and because the president doesn't want to waste lives. I mean, we tragically lost some American in uniform because they're always at risk. So here's the good news, which is the strikes were relatively limited. The way they did this was relatively novel, that they had a successful strike. I'm pretty sure the U.S. is going to adjust for that, so they won't be able to do that again. And what's really important is all of our regional allies are even more with us than ever. So, and that's, I think, really important. And then the most important thing is, look, I mean, we went from saying the big deal is the Iranians can close the strait to then be saying, well, they can interdict the strait. And now they're rapidly losing the capacity to do that. So the longer they fight this war, the worse off they are. And the most important thing is, look at what a hole they're digging themselves in. Now they've got to rebuild bridges, power plants, all their military. I mean, to get back to where they were a year ago, that is just going to take forever.
I don't know about forever. Forever's a long time. There are various estimates about how long it would take them to rebuild, and part of it is contingent on the conditions under which they were attempting to rebuild. I'm not sure that the 2-month hiatus they received from military interdiction was judicious, but okay. Yes, there's no question that Iran is diminished, and that's good news. But diminishing Iran wasn't the stated objective. And the core deliverables, the must-haves, haven't changed, and they don't seem to be currently achieved. But Carafano is accentuating the positive, not just with respect to our Gulf state allies being pushed closer to us by Iran's retaliatory conduct, but also that a deterrent force is being built up against Iran with each passing day that will change the state of play in the Middle East.
You deal with the things you can deal with. What we can do is really build up the deterrent force against that. So, for example, we are in Iraq in a way that we have not been since the early days of the war. We have an Iraqi government which is cooperating with the United States more than ever. We just sealed a huge oil deal with them to bring more resiliency to the oil industry in the region. They are working to kick the Iranian militias, diminish them and get them out of the country. This was unthinkable 4 or 5 years ago. So I know people are fixated by the losses, which are terrible, and how long this is take, but our position in the region is the strongest that it's been since the end of World War II. I mean, we have been dealing with this from Jimmy Carter. Since the days of Jimmy Carter, we have never had a position in the region this strong to create a better future for the region. And then that means less trouble for us, less work for us, safe for America. And I just think that this is the price we are paying. Trust me, it is going to pay off for decades.
For more on this, please be joined by Jason Brodsky, Policy Director of United Against Nuclear Iran, and is a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute's Iran program. Jason, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
So, what do you think of Colonel Carafano's characterization that we're in the strongest position we've been in the Middle East since World War II?
Well, I think that President Trump has undertaken historic action against the Islamic Republic. He's really the only American president since 1979 and the Islamic Revolution that took place that year who has married significant economic pressure with significant military pressure against the Islamic Republic. And that has weakened the regime to a very significant degree. So he has eroded the ability of the Iranian regime to project power beyond its borders. Does that mean that it's not a threat still? No, it still is a threat, unfortunately. But I think that the weakening of the regime is fundamentally in America's interest.
I feel a but coming on in addition to that. So is that a fulsome answer in terms of where we stand in the Middle East, particularly still with the Strait of Hormuz in a contentious state?
We still have work to do there. The job has not been finished yet in Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is contested. The U.S. cannot allow Iran to try to exert unilateral sovereignty over an international waterway like the Strait of Hormuz. There are still military capabilities within the Islamic Republic that need to be degraded. There are still nuclear sites also in the Islamic Republic that need to be destroyed. There was an article overnight published by the Wall Street Journal that demonstrated that there is intelligence suggesting that Iran moved centrifuges into a deeply buried complex called Pickaxe Mountain. And that mountain is something that President Trump has spoken about in recent weeks, and I think it's going to need to be targeted.
Targeted in the sense, I mean, what the question? Yeah, well, I understand, but the question about Pickaxe Mountain was, can we disable what's inside Pickaxe Mountain just with airstrikes, or is it beyond the capacity to do it through that vehicle? Would we have to send in special forces, for example? That was a debate that we were having, several weeks back.
Yeah, I think that might call for some ground component in terms of an operation with Pickaxe Mountain. So there is a very significant risk there. But I think that given the fact that the International Atomic Energy Agency has been forbidden by the Iranian regime to inspect as to what's going on there, and given the risk of a nuclear breakout taking place in a site like Pickaxe Mountain that's deeply buried, I think that we definitely need to take action at some point against Pickaxe Mountain.
Iran's foreign minister there, Abbas Araghchi, has made a couple of interesting statements over the last few days, including this extended sit-down he gave with a filmmaker. One of the things he said is that he's never talked to the cardboard Ayatollah there who replaced Khamenei. Never talked to him pre-war or during the war. So, that sort of calls into question, do we understand who we have been attempting to negotiate with, and is this just, is this all just a facade that we're playing sort of diplomatic whack-a-mole? And number two, he said that, and again, I understand you have to take all of this with skepticism because this is professional propaganda here, but he said that Iran long believed that war with the United States was inevitable, and they had pre-planned retaliation across the region and entered last-minute nuclear talks largely to exhaust the diplomatic path before the U.S.-Israeli attack. That's their characterization, to give the appearance, to promote the idea that they attempted to, even though there was no serious attempt to. That's my response to that characterization, and that they were prepared to escalate, essentially, in defense of what they are otherwise inclined to do.
Well, yeah, I thought that Abbas Araghchi's interview was pretty striking. That comment that he made about him never, ever having any interaction with the supreme leader, both pre-war and post-war, is really it's unthinkable for an Iranian foreign minister to say something like that, because traditionally the supreme leader has been the one who is liaised with the foreign minister under previous presidents, and Ali Khamenei was intimately involved in foreign policy, and for Abbas Araghchi to have had no pre-existing relationship with Mojtaba Khamenei, and now having never spoken to him directly since the war, it raises all kinds of questions as to his remit, as to the chain of command in Tehran, and as to whether this system is even capable of getting to an agreement with the United States. So I do think it raises some profound questions. On your second point, I think the Iranian regime has had long-planned contingencies with respect to the United States, and it has planned those kinds of strikes and has been wargaming this for a long period of time, for many years. So I do think it had been preparing all along, and I don't think it was serious about negotiating with the United States. President Trump made a good faith effort on a few occasions to engage the Iranians, and they've completely repudiated him.
Well, I mean, it almost strikes me that the Araghchi statement that he's never talked to the Ayatollah was intended to embarrass America. It's like you thought you were negotiating with us, or you thought that this was going somewhere. It was never going anywhere. We didn't even have the point, the number one dude engaged in what we were saying at the negotiating table, and maybe that calls into question how much faith we should have in Pakistani and Qatari mediators.
Yeah, I don't think that Abbas Araghchi was purposely trying to embarrass America. I don't think that was the motive in his statement. I think it was an unusual moment of candor. And in fact, there's been a lot of backlash in Tehran from the interview that Abbas Araghchi gave, because some people in the system in the Islamic Republic think that Araghchi disclosed some matters that they preferred to keep behind closed doors. So he's getting some backlash for that interview. But the diplomacy with the Islamic Republic is going nowhere, because fundamentally you cannot get a durable diplomatic outcome with an ideological regime like the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, which is something that should come as a surprise to no one.
Right.
Yeah. So capacity, we've been talking yesterday, at least a little bit about the capacity, the retaliatory capacity of the Iranians after what transpired over the weekend, including the 3 soldiers who were killed. But there was also this with respect to proxies. Houthi terrorist group in Yemen announced a total ban, quote unquote, on maritime navigation by the Saudis under the principle of blockade for blockade, citing their full readiness to respond to any reckless acts by the Saudis. So what should we understand about the capacities of the Iranian proxies in the region, in addition to the state of Iran's capacity?
The Houthi capacities and capabilities are formidable. I do think that they've taken a beating over the last few years as a result of U.S. military action. If listeners will recall, President Trump did authorize military action against the Houthis last year, especially as they were threatening the Bab al-Mandeb and the waters around Yemen after the October 7th massacre in Israel. The Houthis have been long-standing concerns here. They have advanced missile technology, and they can threaten maritime commerce. But, this is not the Houthis as a lone actor here. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from Iran are on the ground in Yemen directing these operations and these calculations that the Houthis are making. They have a representative on the Houthis' decision-making council, the Jihad Council. So I think that behind the scenes here is Iran, of course, and this definitely is a threat to American interests and those of our partners.
Megyn Kelly said recently on her show this regarding Israel and its communications, essentially suggesting that it's corrupting America's understanding of what's happening in the Middle East. Take a listen.
If you go on X, if you go on Instagram, if you go on TikTok, you're being manipulated by Israel. They're not the only ones, but boy, they are the biggest.
Is Israel the biggest manipulator online, trying to misinform for the purposes of their own interests American public opinion?
Israel's an ally of the United States. Our intelligence communities cooperate very closely with each other. Israel has saved American lives, and the United States has saved Israeli lives, and that's a proud alliance to have. That's number one. Number two is that Israel is not the largest influence operation at all. We have Russia, we have China, we have Qatar, and other powers. So it's false to say that Israel is running the largest influence operation with an algorithm on social media at a time when anti-Semitism is exploding on social media. So there's just no evidence for that.
Mm-hmm. Just in terms of the core deliverables, Iran can't get a nuclear weapon. We want the enriched uranium, and the Strait needs to be open. Shipping lanes need to be open. That's just a sort of standard. This is what Marco Rubio had to say on the latter. We've talked about Pickaxe Mountain and the need potentially for a ground component to obtaining centrifuges or destroying centrifuges, obtaining the enriched uranium, which is supposedly buried. On the Strait, this is what Secretary of State Rubio had to say.
Basically is that the United States, every night is taking on the burden of protecting global shipping. Virtually none of those vessels are flagged U.S. Almost none of those vessels are delivering cargo or fuel to the United States. So we are basically providing the service of protecting these ships on behalf of the world, and we're the only ones doing anything about it. So what the president is basically raising the point is, at some point, the countries and the nations benefiting from the shipping through the Straits should be able to step forward and provide at least financial assistance for the cost of providing this very valuable service. That's what the president was alluding to. Now, he pointed out after the fact as well that some of the countries who are shipping product through the Straits are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States, and he'll credit that towards them as far as this effort. But I do think the world is coming to a point now where it's clear that Iran, at least some people in Iran, want to control the Straits and hold that as leverage against the world. And the world has to decide whether or not it's going to allow an international waterway to be under the control of a country like this, which is completely illegal, unlawful, and unacceptable. The United States will do and continue to do what it needs to protect global shipping, but other countries need to begin to step up and provide, whether it's hardware or finances, to help carry that burden. It is not the United States' job to protect shipping for the entire planet forever.
So read between the lines for us there. I mean, it sounds like the administration is not particularly pleased with the level of support it's gotten from Gulf state allies on this topic.
Well, I think it's not just Gulf state allies. I think the Trump administration is furious with our European allies, who have really not stepped up in a big way, given the fact that they depend on the Strait of Hormuz for their own commerce. Our European allies have been content to say, we'll engage in a demining mission once there is a broader diplomatic framework and peace deal in place. But we're not going to get involved before that time. And I think that the Trump administration is rightfully extremely frustrated with this kind of, very lackadaisical and, halting attitude towards our European allies here at a time when they depend on this strait, and it can only be the United States. I think Secretary Rubio is absolutely right on that.
So is it mission critical here? I mean, again, given the objectives, that whether we have the coalition and the support from the coalition that we desire or not, that the United States has to take control of the strait and that card to be played from the Iranians permanently before this ends.
Yeah, I think that's the direction that we're moving in. We're seeing every evening there's been a military operation to degrade the ability of the Iranian regime to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, and that's the direction of travel here. And so that's why I think the United States would like assistance from our allies and partners here. And the longer that this goes on, I think the more likely it is that some of our allies and partners will become more proactively involved here, because Iranian intransigence is actually helping the United States rally a coalition here. And the longer it goes on, I think we're down to U.S. interests.
Jason Brodsky is Policy Director of United Against Nuclear Iran. He's also a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute's Iran program. Jason, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Good to be with you. And Jason joined us on the AlphaWealthGroup.com answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Are you 65 or older and dealing with chronic knee or shoulder pain? You're not alone. At the Joint Relief Institute, we've helped thousands find real relief without surgery. Our non-surgical, FDA-approved treatment uses hyaluronic gel that acts like a cushion between the bones in your knee. As we age, the cushion naturally wears down, causing painful grinding